further ado, we have another spectacular guest this time, John, who has had a pretty impressive journey from operator, investor, founder, even events organizer, let's call it. I've been lucky enough to follow his journey from the sidelines. So I guess to kick things off, do you want to do a brief intro on your story, John?
Yeah, sure. And really excited to be here. Thanks, Chico. We go pretty far back through mutual friends, but I guess since college, I had a entrepreneurship minor. That's how I discovered the world of making or starting businesses. Super grateful to USC for that. I had, parents with very traditional careers and backgrounds that were like, "What the hell are you doing, John?" And I've been figuring it out ever since. But got even luckier from college going into a really early stage time for SpaceX. So I was looking at kind of oil and gas jobs and got lost on an internship in LA and found the actual rocket factory. Got really lucky and pulled in 2014 to SpaceX. So at the time they were figuring out how to make like rockets reusable, and it was a really young company and hadn't done a lot of the amazing things they've done now. And learned a lot, worked very hard, stuck it out there for 4 years, which is quite a significant amount of time for SpaceX years. And then got exposed to the broader like venture and startup community in LA, got really inspired by both my peers at SpaceX starting their own companies, but also meeting other founders, and hosted some very cool events in Mexico, bringing that community together. Eventually met one of the two co-founders of Seed, and Seed was a similarly whole new world for me to space. It was the world of the microbiome, bacteria, and a really exciting opportunity to join like a venture-backed early stage startup as one of the first couple of employees. And I joined, I left SpaceX and then took one day off and then joined Seed, and then we launched. And so it was a really crazy transition in 2018. And Seed was its own rocket ship. Lots of really amazing supply chain, finance, team building stories there. I think maybe to like fast forward the background, but like Seed, grew on a venture pace to a really big company. I stayed there about 3.5 years to about 100-person company. It's now a flagship consumer brand and best-in-class probiotic in the space. Learned a lot about how to build these consumer brands and built a pretty good name in that community in Venice along the way. And so many friends kept reaching out to me asking for help with their supply chains. I kind of wondered, like, why is there not more of a service or a way to help people do this in like a best practices way? Like there are, patterns and templates and tools that can make it a lot easier. And I had to figure it out kind of solo. And so, yeah, Pelagic started out as just me doing some solo consulting and doing a lot of skiing or snowboarding part-time and taking a break, and then met more and more of my amazing team. And they encouraged me to see what was the opportunity that I think that and the need in the space that is supply chain services to these like fast-growing consumer groups. And happy to talk more about what we're doing on that front today. But I guess the only other middle step I glazed over is that I have a couple business partners in a venture studio that we keep quiet, but we've been each other's close friends, peers, and advisors to kind of the trials and tribulations of being a founder and building companies in the space that are servicing and helping the same type of customer that are these really fast-growing consumer brands.
Amazing. No, beautiful story. I guess one of the things I wanted to follow up on was, since many listeners are either fractionals or curious fractionals, I guess I'd love to hear a story on landing your first client. That's always a great story.
Yeah.
The whole process.
Like Elon has this weird thing against consultants. So like back then in my head, I was like, oh, consultants are the worst thing ever. Like they don't do any real work, and like they're not like the founders. And so I think I was like avoiding being a consultant in some ways. But the first consulting project ended up kind of being a friend, and I was still finishing up or part-time at Seed still, and it was this very cool like mushroom tincture brand, and they were just like good friends who needed help and some guidance, and it was the company's called Rainbow, and I got to work with them for a fair amount of time and got comfortable doing that and realized it wasn't so hard, and actually I really enjoyed the way I could show up for and really help founders and people who needed guidance in my area of expertise.
Amazing. And what exactly did you do for them? I'm curious.
That was a good time, because it was like, well, I can do 15 different things. Like, what do you want me to do? And there was like, it was just so broad. I think it was a blend of like financial model analysis and building and planning for the business. Then we went into some packaging. Then I started negotiating and talking to their manufacturer that was causing problems for them. So it was really just like, I guess the way I would describe it now is like executive advisory support. But there were a couple other fun projects that came shortly thereafter where I learned some important lessons and also met some of my earliest team members doing that like solo consulting work.
Beautiful. Amazing. Cool. Thanks for the story. And then one of the things I'd love to hear more on is just on mindset shifts, right? So you've gone from operator, consultant, investor, all these different hats. What have been like those mindset shifts for you that have been like critical to just navigate the different, spaces you're in, right? Because you go from solo, big teams, etc. So I'm curious to hear what's been your experience.
Yeah. So SpaceX, I was like a cog in a really cool machine, like a really complicated machine. So, had to do my part, but not really in control of much. Seed, I was able to kind of start steering, but I was much more implementing someone else's vision. So, hey, can we do this? Maybe let me figure it out and I'll tell you the steps of how to get there. Pelagic's been like so hard and so crazy to shift that mindset, because and you kind of have to step in and out of both, because if you think about our service, it is to be those executors of supply chain scale and problems to a bunch of visionary founders. But then I also have to now fill the shoes of what is the vision for Pelagic, where is it going, and why should more and more people join us and be a part of the team. And that's been the most uncomfortable transition for sure. It's way more fun to be the operator. But I think there's very like there's certain patterns of humans that I think just that resonate with those roles in different ways.
Makes sense. And then just because I feel not just me, but a lot here are big admirers of what Elon built. I'm curious if you can share maybe one lesson from SpaceX that you still implement on a daily basis, especially for building and scaling teams or just operational efficiency, which obviously is his forte.
Yeah, he's evolved in the public eye in so many ways. So it used to be the coolest thing ever to be associated with him. Now he's a very politically adjusted figure. Yeah, but he's really good at building teams and building companies and engineering difficult products. So I think at Seed I actually brought a lot of the work ethic and culture in that was very intentional by those founders. They wanted some of that, but also this kind of aspirational optimism towards a bigger, brighter future via innovation. In Pelagic today, like the most obvious cultural paradigm is we answer everything with a yes and. So there's no no's. Any problem, every single problem in the universe, you don't need to answer with no. There's just costs or constraints. So that's maybe the best way to describe that optimism towards very complicated problems to be solved, because SpaceX, we were solving a bunch of problems that humans had never done before, and you kind of had to have that outlook.
Yeah, in space, literally speaking, right? Amazing. And then one thing I wanted to maybe tap into a little bit more, right? Because that's why I asked you a question around what you did for Rainbow, which you had to pick from a bunch of services, and now you run a service firm that's pretty, specific on a problem that they're solving, right? Helping founders scale their supply chains. How do you position Pelagic now, and how has that like niche evolved? Where did you found the most kind of potential in doing consulting work? How do you differentiate your business now from others? I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's funny. You can like pick up on all these little like breadcrumbs of the business. Like I think we incorporate, like our Google Drive says we're called Pelagic Packaging because we were going to do that. And now I think like in such a cool way, I think what you also celebrate, like fractional talent and fractional services are so powerful and so important to like the modern entrepreneurial experience. And I worked with a lot of those firms or a wide variety of service businesses when I was at Seed. I think we were maybe an early user of those to huge success. I was a producer of massive value across many different endpoints. But it was always a pretty like bad experience. Like it was like I was pulling teeth or like trying to get the baseline things we'd asked for just delivered on time, or there was a lot of like ambiguity in the scope of what was laid out to be done. So yeah, definitely went into like designing Pelagic as an anti-agency in that way. But I think the other thing I'll say is that there was a model to follow that is very common, that like let's say outsourced accounting or outsourced fractional finance, but there's hundreds of those, and there's maybe 2 or 3 in our entire industry of like accredited, real, capable, like supply chain expert agencies that know about these problems. And so from a market size and share and direction, it was like, cool, I could battle all these other companies for some finance solutions, or I could lean into a domain that I know really, really well. And it's been really interesting. I would say that the first year or so, like we're maybe 3 years old from ideation, we're a year and a half in the world. The first like year of pitching before we were in market, we were like telling people it was possible to outsource their supply chain to people like trustworthy enough to actually manage it. They're like, what? I thought that had to be like a full-time hire no matter what. And I was like, well, we have a really good team and a way to do it, and it's better and cheaper, so we should talk.
Makes sense. And you mentioned 2 words that I really like, which are endpoints and then trust. And I bring this up because I feel like the biggest complexity in supply chain is just working with a ton of different stakeholders, right? I think you work with more than 250 suppliers is what I read. So I'm curious to hear what's your personal playbook on just building trust and collaboration at scale.
Yeah, I think my team has to trust me, and that's maybe the most foundational place that I start. But I think as a service, we talk about there's all these different words or ways to market or sell, and we orient towards like a feeling that we want our clients to actually feel. It's like the most foundational way you can describe what's going to happen in the transaction. And the problem with supply chain as an industry is that it's full of these like shady brokers and alternate incentives to get people to go set up their business a certain way. And we wanted to just show up into it by being the most high trust, high integrity service that maybe was less profitable or grew slower. But if we built in the long term that way, we would eventually earn the trust of the industry and get all the best clients coming and working with us. Does that kind of answer your question? Or,
it does.
And that's on the customer side. But I guess what you asked about was like working with these suppliers. And so same exact approach, but it's very interesting because the supply chain side of interacting with all of these brands and clients really struggle. The best manufacturer gets so many referrals, they don't really need to market themselves. And kind of the worst ones are really good at putting themselves out there. And so we just try to find really like a healthy balance of understanding that these are like human run and human led operations, that they should trust us as well. But we also have to stay agnostic to some of the incentives they want to pitch our way. And we want to hold them accountable as much as we work with them.
Makes total sense. Yeah, thanks for that. And then one thing that I wanted to tap into as well is, who's your ideal customer right now, or maybe another way to put it is who's not, right? Like, who do you consider not to be an ideal client for Pelagic?
That's been a really fun lesson learned over the last 3 years. Anyone building or expanding their service business, like, it's always worth waiting or the uncomfortable gaps in work to end up with working with really great long-term clients than saying a short-term yes to one that you like can close. And we do, like, we really flip the script now. Like, we vet clients to work with our amazing team and kind of protect them from people who are let their egos get in the way or have ulterior motives or think that they like, another really subtle way we describe it is, like, I think about, is this client going to work with us, or are they going to think that we work for them? And that usually helps me understand how I want to set my team up for success in relating, because these problems are really sticky and complicated, and they don't have like back of the book solutions we can usually fix in a day or two. It's like, hey, if you trust us, this for a couple months, we will completely change your business and infrastructure for the better. And if they can't subscribe to that, it's not going to go well.
Makes total sense to me. Amazing. And then one thing I wanted to touch on as well is you obviously went a little through the kind of agency route and hiring from your team, but most folks, at least in Landa, they're exploring kind of the solo path first, right? So I'm curious to hear what led you to go kind of into the agency versus solo model. What are some of the pros and cons that you might want to lay out here for other folks listening who are kind of exploring what's best for them, right?
Yeah, it's a totally different job. I miss the client work, or like I get to kind of listen in on the client work now. I don't do it anymore. I spend all of my time kind of trying to automate or hand off the things that I'm doing to the right team members, setting up the team for success, and then thinking about ways to create the most value for the organization for my team and shareholders. I think for me personally, the takeaways, I think I kind of gone through COVID. I loved the early building stages of Seed. I love humans. I love working and collaborating with people in small groups on hard problems to innovate. And I had business partners who were building their own companies, running 2 offsites in houses right next to each other in Brazil. And I got to see how they were working with these teams in person again. And I was like, that's so cool. That's exactly what I want to do in building a company with a larger team that's beyond just me doing consulting projects, here and there. And yeah, that same week, I think we closed like 5 or 6 more clients that I couldn't even handle myself. And it was like time to decide and game on whether or not we were going to hire and expand. And I think we hired our 25th or 26th person this week, and sending out like 3 more offers next week. So not slowing down.
Congrats. And I guess this is an obvious one, but how do you handle that? Just personally, how do you avoid that burnout? Do you have any tips on just keeping your mental sanity, man? Because it's tough, especially with a big team.
Yeah. The burnout's real. The stress is real. I take the responsibility of kind of like supporting and taking care of my team and my clients very, very deeply. My most important like form of relief, I think, for many people is just like exercise, like constant exercise and staying healthy. I think like nature is a big one for me. Nature was like why we call it Pelagic. Like I want to stay very grounded and integrated into kind of an impactful orientation for the business as we grow. But exercise and nature usually kind of take care of my sanity. And I would say more recently, there's like so much noise, and the 70 businesses that we're helping and their problems that could like creep in the rest space. And so the more present I can be, the more I can recharge. And cooking has been my latest joy on that front, and just experimenting with flavors and taste. And there's a lot of supply chain to cooking too. So it makes sense.
You're still being creative, which is part of being an entrepreneur. So I'm glad you're doing that. And I guess you did mention pandemic, and we can't end this podcast without going deep into that, right? So you redesigned global operations during one of the most uncertain times in recent history, right? So I'm just curious to hear what are some of the learnings that you took from that time, especially with client work or just
I mean, well, so COVID for me was we were like in our most aggressive growth phase at Seed. We had like 60,000 subscribers, and we were like trying to tell everyone about the microbiological world, and then a virus shut down the entire world. So it was really good for sales, but really like painful for our supply chain. Like I actually remember tracking kind of how it spread as it impacted each step of our supply chain. Specifically, like a lot of our microbes were grown in northern Italy and southern Spain, and then we encapsulated in Jersey tri-state area. So I would say like that moment or those couple weeks were stressful in many ways, but I think like on a work basis and keeping Seed like operating and getting product to our subscribers was probably one of the driving core memories for why Pelagic was created, transparently. So it was just like, wow, like supply chain can get so stressful and so completely out of your control. And if you don't have resiliency or plans or backup plans to your backup plans, or any sort of like resources or guidance on what to do with a crazy situation like what COVID was, it can really take years off your life. And COVID was, I mean, I guess on top of all that, I was participating in the crazy train that was trying to get like PPE or like, masks and other medical equipment into the US. And we were trying to donate it just to local hospitals or medical organizations in like that most acute phase of COVID. And kind of saw like a pretty like ugly side of humanity and how people were trying to monetize like a national emergency, or international emergency. But COVID was crazy.
Yeah. And I was going to ask about a war story, but I think that's a great one actually. And then I guess a follow-up that I have from this conversation is just, what's one learning that you would say just sets apart an efficient supply chain to an inefficient one, right? Like what's that one learning or mistake that you commonly see with people who, might use a Pelagic on their site?
Yeah. It totally like the coolest thing, and then maybe this like bring it back to kind of the consulting journey. Maybe I'm freezing, but the trends, like I had one data set that was running all this supply chain work at Seed, and then now I have like, many hundreds of other companies that I've gotten to see how they run their operations, and there are real patterns that start emerging. You're like, oh, they're having the same problem. Here's another problem. Whoa, this is crazy. Like, and that's great for the clients, and it's great for us to be able to build tools and systems to rinse and repeat about, like you say, flexible enough to what their product or data or team is struggling with. But the best way I can describe like the overarching pattern is that, early stage companies tend to be figuring out the core network or how they create their product that we call their supply chain. Then as they start growing or adding complexity in terms of how they're selling, many channels or many directions, or adding more team members that have to communicate around what the business needs to grow, it translates to what we call systems. So like they get really mad at their supply chain sometimes, and it's like, well, you're not actually giving them a forecast, or you're not setting them up for success with like good processes for your business internally. And then I would say the next phase of growth, and these growth phases are kind of in the ranges of like hundreds of thousands to tens of millions to hundreds of millions in revenue. It tends to be more about the people. So then we orient our service towards training or tools or equipping their team or finding the right person that knows how to use this very clunky piece of software. Might be called NetSuite. And like there's just like really cool patterns out there where we're trying to just empower the teams that they have or that they need to build out to run those supply chains and broader operations.
Makes sense. Amazing. Cool, John. I guess one thing that I wanted to get your insights on as well is, you've seen a trend and you've worked with, billion-dollar companies, you've worked with crappy startups, but you also mentioned that you see the potential of having kind of a fractional operator role almost in the same level that you're seeing, fractional accounting firms, right? So it's almost like developing into this fixed role that you will see more often in these startups. So I'm curious to hear how you see that evolution, right? How do you see the role of fractional operators evolving in time? What's your trend or how do you see the future?
Yeah, I think there's some pretty amazing tools. Like fractional was already on its way up because of crazy platforms like LinkedIn. I think that we're making it so much easier for solo operators to at least find a couple jobs, but then they quickly realize like it's really hard to like maintain that and keep it consistent in terms of like consistent income. The latest AI revolution and all that is going on in AI that is like everywhere all at once, I think will only accelerate the I think everyone's all worried about job displacement and job loss, et cetera. But I see it as this crazy, positive, optimistic opportunity where power operators, power experts like these fractional consultants can now be the most efficient, the most consistent, and the most like scalable or more scalable than they've ever been, right? So I think the old paradigm was like, oh, I never have someone kind of working on more than like 3 to 5 clients ever because they can't split their brain that many times. And I think the new AI age is like, we don't do this now, but like I'm dreaming of a world where like you have the same quality of service, but you could be servicing like 10 to 15 clients at one time, and that's very normal. And so that's how I think about it. Let's say like us as the fractional service industry. And then I'll just say also, AI is going to create more startups than have ever existed ever in humanity. And that's so exciting and probably really good for our collective future. And it'll get really noisy, it'll get really competitive. But like, I also see this crazy world where like, each human has 3 to 4 startups they run, and that's no big deal, and that's how they run their life. And in that world, fractional service businesses have many, many, many more customers they could potentially be helping.
Makes sense. And I guess on the company side, is there one trend that you're most excited about how startups are scaling their supply chains or how they're going to scale in the future? Because we're not all from this space, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, the hot topic like trends for supply chain right now, the most obvious one is just tariffs, right? Like I think we're waiting to hear from the Supreme Court if tariffs are legal, which will be a whole other like crazy wrench in the system. I think AI on a lot of like strategic decision making and making those more like fractional operators and the way they communicate and work together will stay extremely relevant and present in the industry. I'm most excited about, but I think is still like 10 years away, like a world of robotics. So I think and software engineers are freaking out at how amazing AI is, and just the world of like manufacturing physical goods is still so challenging and so unscalable, and still not really accessible to actual like automated robotic manufacturing principles. And I think when that happens, I think Pelagic will be a way bigger company, hopefully. But I would be very, very excited to start like translating all the benefits of that technology into supply chains and our customers.
For sure, for sure. And I'm seeing a ton of trends, especially, hear a lot about Amazon and the number of robots that are working in their warehouse. So yeah, excited about that one too. I guess I wanted to switch a little bit more into just more personal questions. I'm out of questions actually on the classic structure, John, but thanks for the time. Just so folks can get to know you a little bit more, right? So the first one I had was just, what's the book you gifted the most, or you give the most, the one that the one that's actually like shaped how you think about systems, or in general, one that's can be not business related, but one that you've gifted the most. Curious to hear your answer here.
Yeah, I don't read as much as I used to anymore, and that sounds crazy, but I love podcasts. So like podcasts and audio book and audio everything, and actually listening to the people and the founders themselves is how I really love to learn. All that being said, I think the book club we just finished for my team at Pelagic is called Thinking in Systems, and yeah, it's a classic. It's a sustainability classic. It's a systems engineering classic. It's really, really, really applicable to all the work that we're doing, because that's kind of how we teach supply chain. Also, is this very like fundamentals, or like what are the physics of the problem that you're trying to solve, because we're going to be walking into the room working on products that we don't have a lot of background or industry knowledge around. So how do you quickly learn what's going on, what needs to be solved, and then fill that context in later? But yeah, thinking in systems. And then there's a really interesting proliferation of podcast content, like maybe what we're doing here, about just hearing from people who are building it while they're doing it, or have had a lot of success doing so.
Yeah, glad to be pushing this movement as well, because I'm definitely moving towards podcasts as well. Second one that I had, John, I think you might have mentioned this, in the interview, but what's one habit that has really made a true impact on your life, I guess, over the last few years, especially?
One habit. Getting in the ocean.
There you go.
Very on brand. You know it quite well, Chuko. But yeah, and I say getting in the ocean, I mean you're exercising, it's all the things in one, but you're exercising, you're communing or interacting with nature. And I think maybe the thing I'll highlight is you also are like getting out of your own head and realizing there's so much bigger, complicated things out there than the bad day or the problems you're dealing with in the business and life.
I love it. And then just to end with a more profound one. So what does success look like for you personally, or Pelagic? You can do either of these ones.
Yeah, I saw that one. That was a tough one, but I think that I am like really, really grateful for where we're at right now. Like, I think we're already on such a awesome footing and moment. So like my easy answer is just like more of the same, but I think the foundational like indicators of success to be like more specific, or just like making sure that we still have like an absolutely amazing team, that we're not like losing or diluting the quality of our people as we grow. I think our clients will continue to get amazing and become higher quality, but I only mean that in terms of like orienting towards more and more innovation or impact, and still getting to work on some really interesting, cool projects that way. And then my team will tell you, I just say like, 2 or 3x the business again, and at zero drop in quality of service. Like, I still want people referring us left and right. I still want them being like, I've never been treated this way before. I've never had someone like so proactive and anticipating my needs, be such communicators, also like actually care about my business despite having other clients. Like there's these like very powerful feelings that we're showing up with that are these, you know, trust, high integrity. We actually like did a whole offsite mapping them out, but if we can keep those around even at scale, I'll be very, very happy. And then the personal goals, I think, are just like make a little bit more time for life. So accomplish all these things, but do it all by working less somehow, which is hard to, like this. Yeah, it's easy to lose yourself in like a positive way too, like the excitement of growth, the excitement of all that's going so well that pulls you back in and makes you work really late nights. But yeah, I would say trusting my team to do more and more of it, which means I'm less and less involved in that day to day.
I love it. Well, man, this has been it for me. It was an exciting conversation, a great wrap, by the way, as well. It's hard to put less hours when you're in flow, and it definitely sounds like you are in flow with your team and with your clients. So yeah, excited for your next phase, man. But thanks for your time, and then we'll open it up with some questions from the audience. I think that's going to be a next